everyone, I'm Allie, co-founder of PotomacBeads, and I'm going to be working with you today on micro macrame. It's macrame, but we're using small thread and small beads to achieve the look that we want. I wear this bracelet more than any other bracelet, and it is very, very old, and I thought it would be fun to show you the process that goes into a bunch of the different micro macrame stitches to get the bracelet. Remember, you can use tons of different materials for this, any type of cording, any type of leather. Check out links below me in the description if you want to get any more materials from us at PotomacBeads. Gather up a bunch of materials and let's get started. So the first thing that I've done is use my 1mm leather, and I've cut approximately 3.5 feet of that leather. It's important that you use 1mm because of the size of beads that we want to get on the cord. If you want to use something that is thinner or thicker, you can also do so. You just need to keep track of what you're using so you know that the beads that you're using to separate the different sections of the micro macrame will fit over. We're going to be doubling that 3.5 feet, and I'm tying just an overhand knot, making sure that it's big enough for my button to go through. I'm also leaving a little bit more comfortable space because the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to take some Chinese knotting cord and we're going to macrame along the loop. So I'm going in and just doing that overhand knot, making sure the leather is double on each end, and making sure my loop can fit my button comfortably and that it has just a little bit of extra room for that macrame. Give it a nice tight pull, and that doubles it over. Again, we're going to be using the macrame cord, the knotted cord, and I'm going to cut about 1 foot of the knotted cord and get ready to decorate that outer loop. Go ahead and take that cord right now and tie it to the loop that you just made. Now, this is not necessary for your design. You can keep it empty if you want. Just leaving a little bit of extra thread. This will allow me to knot when I get to the other side. All we're going to do here is half hitch knots. We're going to go over the leather and under the leather and through the loop that we just created. Push it up against the piece, and there you go. Again, over that leather, under the leather, through the loop, and grab. Continue on doing this the whole way around this plain leather loop that you did, and that'll get that nice decorated edge. If you want it really tight together, you may need 2 feet of that Chinese knotting cord. When you get to the end of the macrame loop there, what you're going to do is take these 2 thread ends and we are going to tie them together. And you can see exactly how perfectly this kind of foot of cord worked to get that nice macrame loop. It's also going to protect the leather as you are putting your bracelet on and off to do this nice little loop. Going in, then I am tying 2 knots, right over left, left over right. Taking a pliers even, giving a nice tight pull, getting those 2 threads together. And then, because it doesn't matter because it's on the opposite side of the knot, I'm going to go in here with my threads up or my thread burner cord cutter. Especially with this Chinese knotting cord, it is synthetic, so it will burn down and kind of have a nice sticky end. I'm going to burn this down a little bit and burn it right to the end of that knot. You can use a little glue if you want to use glue for it too, that's up to you. If you have a different cord cutter that you're using for bead weaving versus doing any macrame, it's a good idea to have 2 separate ones for those. You can see it gets a little gummy. All right, so that first introductory loop is done now, and that knot will just kind of stay to the back and my button will fit comfortably inside and hang out in that loop. Just to give you an idea too, the button that I'm using is 15mm, so that foot of cording worked really well for 15mm. From here, it's time to start the design. Now, originally in this old bracelet, I have 3 spacer beads going right up next to and kind of covering the knot rather than doing a full-on knot. Then I have just a classic macrame stitch, and then another bead, and then some smaller beads into the design. So we're going to follow basically the same gist of that here, grabbing and putting on some beads. I'm going to be doing silver and gold in my mix. I've placed 2 of the antique brass large hole spacer beads in 6mm, and I'm starting out using the Griffin Silk in a size 10. Now I want to keep the needle on the Griffin Silk, and I have this in that nice lilac purple color. And to keep the needle on, I'm going to use about 2 feet of this thread. I'm doubling the thread over towards the end for that 2-foot section. That way one side is going to be really long and one side is just going to be that foot long. We're going to use the leather as our center cord along this design. So you're going to double over that cord right at that foot, make a loop going underneath the leather. I'm going to loop it onto the leather, pulling both cords through that loop that we just made. If you need any help with any of these stitches too, you can search this YouTube channel for specific bracelets that use these stitches in more detail. So you can see one I had to bring a lot more thread through and one I did not. We'll slide that right up to the knot, and then I'm going to separate the cords right and left. We're going to do that regular square knot, and we go over the top of the leather with the right cord. Left cord goes over top of that leather, underneath then and tucked back through the loop on the right. Slide that up next to our little knot there, and that's our first section of our purple. So we get alternating. Now we'll go the left side. The left side thread is going to go over top of that leather. The right side goes under or over top of that leather, then under or over top of the silk rather, sorry, underneath the leather and through the loop. Push that up right against your beads. Now I'm going to go to the right side, over the top. Left side comes over the top of that right cord. The left cord goes underneath the leather and through the loop made by the right cord. So this alternates from right to left throughout the design, and switching which sides you're going will keep this as a flat look. This is a regular macrame stitch too. So there's lots that you can do with this. I'm going to continue on till I use up basically all of my shorter side of my thread and get that nice purple color into the mix. You can see here with the Chinese knotting cord in the brown, it has that nice zigzag back and forth to give a little bit of a different look to the end of this micro macrame. As I finish up the macrame, you can see it gave me about 2 inches with that foot of cord. Remember, whatever you're actually doing your knotting around, what size leather could impact how long that's going to be and the size you want to do. With the cord that is attached to the needle, I'm going through a 4mm bead, opening the antique silver plated large hole 4mm bead. I'm going through that and bringing the needle down with that one side. The other side has about a little less than an inch left. And what I'm doing with that is just letting it hang out there. As I get to the end of the design, I will go in and actually drop a little dab of E6000 or Loctite glue and then trim that down really, really close and use a thread burner or thread zap to go in there and then burn down the additional thread. Unlike the Chinese knotting cord, this silk will not have, because it's silk, does not ball up like the other one. So I have the one cord that I'm kind of hiding and I'm going to conceal and cut really, really short and hide it in there. I'll dab a dab of glue, and then this side I will cut off and trim as close as possible. From here, then I get to separate out the cords. Burn through the silk, which will create a little bit of smoke. So don't be afraid if you see that. And the silk does not like to burn, so that's why I said about it versus the Chinese knotting cord. You can see the burn starting to happen. And once you have that burned through, then that one's good to go. And now on to the next portion of the design. The next portion of the design, we'll start to add in some beads, and I'll show you how to weave them in between. I'm going to be using some 3mm pearls in the design, and then also I have some crystals just to add a little bling and make this one a little bit more girly. So for this next section, I've taken some .006 wildfire beading thread on a size 12 or 10 beading needle, and I've tied it onto the leather, just a regular knot, pushing it up near that kind of stopper bead, or that metal bead, which is used again to kind of separate and start and stop my different sections. I have some 15-0, some tiny little seed beads here, and going through and bringing the thread through the middle of the leather, I'm adding 2 of those tiny little seed beads. I'm letting those drop down between my leather, and I'm going to push the leather apart, go over top of the leather, take your needle under the leather, and then I'm going to sew back through those two little tiny beads and over the leather on the other side. If you need any more help with this, I have several of these videos. Push that down right into that kind of little crevice there. Go underneath the next piece of leather, out to the middle, and this time we're going to add one of our pearls. I have a collection here of some pearls. These are 3mm check pearls in a sand color. And then I have some 4mm tanzanite and some 3mm melons here. Separating those out and go to the other side of the leather. Take the thread over the top of the leather. Have it come out between the middle. Go back through the pearl. And then up to the top of the leather across. If you really want to be super careful, you can also sew back through the pearl. That's fine. In many of the designs, I sew back through the pearl one more time and then start my next bead on the other side. From here, I'll add 2 more pearls, total of 6. I'll do a pattern. And this really just continues then going back through, adding a bead over top of the leather on the other side, bring the thread out between, sew into. And some people, when doing this, will want their leather on a clipboard or pinned down. I like to hold my project as I'm working with it. I find it easier to work with. Go back up then, making sure that leather loops around, or the thread loops around the leather. Pull nice and tight. Get ready to add your next bead. So I'm just going to push that down along the base here, making sure that I don't have the beads sitting too close because I want them to be able to move around a little bit. I'm going to add about 1 inch or so of beads, and then we'll get ready to do the next stitch. After you're done this next section of adding in your pearls, and I decided to keep it right about 1 inch, I did sew back through the 15 rows one more time. I'm going to take this thread and tie a knot over both of my pieces of leather, getting that up nice and tight. Making sure also that it's not kind of pulling to one side. See how it's a little bit bubbled up to the left? Make sure that these are equal. Give a nice little pull again. Tie one more knot. And again, all of these connection pieces, I will go back and add just a tiny little dab of glue on. Tie that knot one more time. Get ready to add your next 4mm bead right over top, bringing the thread down just like we did with the thread of the silk. And then we'll burn off the thread to the end of that piece. We'll get ready then, I'll show you how to do that fishtail and how to do another section. For that fishtail, we'll be adding in some more silk thread. This time I have a nice light pink color in a size 6. For the next section, I have the size 6 silk thread, and I've taken the whole thing off my spool. We're going to be doing a fishtail wrap here. Again, if you need a little bit more help, you can check out the video that I have on it. Threads going between the leather, up and around the left side, through the leather, have it nice and tight against the top there to keep the nice look, around the top and through. That's all it is. It's again just kind of that series of figure 8s going through. The most important thing is when you're working with this and when you're doing this, you want to keep the leather on the correct sides, nice and easy and flat. You also want to make sure that you're not going in and creating a knot along the bottom. And you also want to pull it the same kind of tautness so that way you get a nice little fish look there going back and forth and no bubbles in your cord. So go ahead and continue this for as long as you like, and then we'll switch on and we'll switch to a yet again different style of beading on this micro macrame wrap. Finishing up that fish tail, we're going to loop around the leather, just tie off a knot just like I did before. On the other side, we'll do one, that half hitch, the same knot that we started out with basically doing when we did the loop for our button, and 2. I'm going to slide on 2 gold spacers now. I'll pull the thread through here, and then I'll chop it off right below that spacer as I get in to do the next portion of the design. So continuing on with the design, I've actually had fun kind of adding in some other elements. After the fishtail, I went back to just that regular kind of square macrame knot, just like we did at the beginning. Added a bead in the middle on the leather and then just continued with it. Added 3 more beads. Went back and added a little bit more of kind of that pink color with the suede gold. And you can see kind of how that bracelet is looking as you start to kind of pile it up. And I did a large hold silver bead, and now I'm getting ready to do a series where I have beads, 11 OC beads, on the exterior of some of my thread. So I'm back to that light pink 6-0, and again I've tied a knot at the bottom, and I've added onto it 15 seed beads. I'm going to allow about 12 inches one more time. Tie that 12 inches, because remember we have the knot on the other side, so I'm leaving 12 inches. And I'm going to tie a knot around my leather. Those 12 seed beads you want to stay to the side with the knot. What I'm going to do now is take my thread and needle, do that same half hitch knot where it's just going right over left and then under. Do one more, making our little loop, then going underneath the loop, through the middle of that loop that you just made. Now what I'm going to do is systematically slide up my seed beads. So my seed beads are going to go up into the knot on the outer edge of the design, and both on the right and the left. So on the left I already have the beads there. On the right, because I don't want to tie a knot, I'm just going to slide the beads on as I need them. There I have it. Now you're going to keep track of which side you actually need to do the knot on. So remember whichever side you do the knot on, and I'm going and doing the next one, pulling all those beads through, and you can see that sticks those beads on the outer edge. I'm going to do another knot to hold them in place, maybe 2. Still doing that same, making the loop, going over top of it, going underneath and through the loop. There's that one. One more. And then I'll add a seed bead to each side. So it's just a different kind of look to that micro macrame. Again, taking my thread, sliding up a bead on the one that it's already there, adding a bead then at the bottom of the needle to the opposite side, sliding it up, and going in and knotting it in place. I'm going to do this whole thing till all of my seed beads are done, and that's going to take up a little bit more of my room. I am pushing this kind of up towards the design so that way you only see leather really on the sides of the seed bead. Everywhere on the bracelet and on the design, I want to make sure that my knotting is nice and tight so that way it doesn't stretch out at all. After completing all of the knots, and I'll show you kind of the progression that I did. After the fishtail, again, I did another section of the Chinese knotting cord. Then I did some brighter beads, found a fun silver bead somewhere in my stock, and then did that beads on the sides that I showed you. Went back to the fishtail with the purple, added some more of the beads, did another section with the brown, found another funky bead, and then I'm going to take those 2 ends and do a knot, holding that last bead in place. Put on my button. Both threads, if they fit through, depending on your leather, you can put both through at once. If they don't worry about it. You can put one through and tie behind. And all I'm going to do is tie a knot right after that button. Again, grab your pliers, yank on the cord. If you use something smaller than a 1mm leather, careful because it can snap. And there you have your bracelet completely finished. I'll trim down these ends here. And then actually intentionally kind of separate them and fray them up a little bit so that knot does not come out. If you want to, you can keep them from fraying and just do a little bit of a burn down with your thread ends is fine. All I have to do now is go back and couple of those connection points where I left the thread. I have to burn that off. I'll put it on so you can see kind of what the look is of this fun wrap bracelet. So you can see all of those different varieties of that micro macrame that are used in the bracelet to do this fun blended micro macrame look. So gather up again any materials and kind of have fun with it. As always, thank you so much for joining me in this version of the micro macrame wrap. Have fun whether or not you want to do it in kind of the neutrals, stay a little bit more girly, gather up any supplies, embroidery thread, sewing thread, a couple of random beads that you have, and really, really make it your own. Remember, as with this and all of our other YouTube videos, you can give a little thumbs up, comment below with any suggestions, questions, as well as ideas to help other people out that are watching the video. You can also subscribe to this YouTube channel to get regular updates from us here at PotomacBeads. Keep in mind, if you do need any materials, below me in the video in the description are links to purchase from online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Thanks so much for watching and have fun with your blended micro macrame wrap.